moors were silent again. But silence isn't always peace. Sometimes it's a warning. Weeks had passed since the stranger's visit. Kathy and Hareton had resumed their quiet life, fixing the roof, planting trees, reading together by the fire. But something had changed. Not outside, inside. Kathy stood by her mirror one morning, brushing her hair. When she paused, there, on the edge of the dresser, was a letter. Old paper, torn edge, familiar handwriting. She picked it up with trembling hands. To my dearest daughter, forgive me. The ink was faded, but the signature was clear. Catherine Earnshaw, her mother. But how? Her mother had died long ago, long before Kathy was even old enough to understand grief. She dropped the letter. It fluttered to the ground like a fallen ghost. That night, Hareton found her curled up in bed, silent. "What is it?" he asked gently. "She wrote to me, somehow, from the past, or maybe from somewhere else." He took her hand, firm and warm. "It's just old paper, Kathy." "No," she whispered. It felt like she was speaking, warning me. The next few days, odd things began to happen. A music box played by itself in the nursery. Books fell from shelves in the dead of night, and Kathy kept hearing whispers in the hall. "Let go, let go." Even the dog wouldn't go near the old staircase. Its growls echoed through the house like thunder. Kathy tried to ignore it. She focused on her work, on the baby growing inside her, on Hareton's steady presence. But one afternoon, while clearing out the Grange's old cellar, they discovered something hidden in the wall. A diary, wrapped in cloth, sealed with wax. It was Nellie Dean's, the woman who had witnessed everything. They opened it together by candlelight. Page after page revealed secrets, Heathcliff's darkest moments, Catherine's final regrets, Isabella's escape, Edgar's grief. And then, one entry stood out. "They are not gone, not fully. Catherine still waits, and Heathcliff still roams these moors, angry, unfinished." That night, Kathy had a dream. She was walking through the moors, the wind sharp and cold. Suddenly, the sky turned black, and she stood at the edge of a cliff. There, beneath the storm, stood Heathcliff, his eyes full of fire, voice like stone. "She was mine," he said. "You carry her blood, but not her will." Then a hand reached out from the mist. "Catherine's." "Don't listen to him," her mother whispered. "Your story is not ours. Run." Kathy woke up screaming. She rushed to Hareton, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared," she said. "What if I'm repeating their curse?" He held her close, firm and unshaken. "You're not. We love each other without control, without pride, without poison. That's what makes us different." The next morning, Kathy did something bold. She walked alone to the old tree on the hill, where her mother and Heathcliff had once carved their names. She knelt before it. "I forgive you," she whispered, "but I am not you. I am not repeating your love story. I am writing my own." The wind blew gently. No more whispers, only quiet. As she returned home, Hareton was waiting with good news. "The doctor came," he said, smiling. "Everything's healthy. We're having a daughter." Kathy smiled through her tears. "Then she'll be raised with peace, not ghosts." The episode ends as the two of them stand on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the moors. But in the distance, far beyond the hills, a shadow moves through the mist. A woman in white, her face unreadable, watching, waiting. Morning came with soft light and stillness. But peace is sometimes a disguise. Inside the nursery, Kathy rocked in the chair, holding a tiny bonnet she had sewn the night before. She imagined her baby's face, her laugh, her first steps, a future untouched by the darkness that haunted these walls. But fate had one more secret to reveal. While organizing old books in the Grange's library, Kathy opened a worn volume of poems, the kind her mother used to read. As she flipped through the fragile pages, something fell out. A letter, yellowed with time. It was folded 4 times, and on the back, written in faded ink, for her, when she's ready. Kathy's hands trembled. Inside, the handwriting was unmistakable. Catherine Earnshaw's. If you find this, it means you've survived the storms I could not. You are stronger than I ever was. And now, you must know the truth. The letter revealed a hidden past. Before her final days, Catherine had written a confession, not just of love, but of betrayal. She had once considered running away, not with Edgar, not with Heathcliff, but alone, to raise her unborn child in peace. But I was too weak. I chose love wrapped in fire, instead of love born in light, and it burned me whole. Kathy's breath caught in her throat. Her mother hadn't been only a victim. She had known the danger, and yet she had gone back to it. I stayed in the storm, the letter continued. But you, my child, you must find the sun. She folded the letter gently, tears in her eyes. Hareton found her there, silent, shaken. You okay? He asked. She tried to save me, even before I was born. That night, the wind returned, louder this time, howling across the moors. Kathy stepped out onto the balcony. In the distance, she saw her again, the woman in white, standing where the hills met the mist. She held a lantern, and beside her, barely visible, was a man, tall, silent, watching. Heathcliff, Kathy whispered, but they vanished with the next gust of wind. The next day, as Kathy tried to focus on the future, another visitor came to Wuthering Heights. A man in his 30s, dark coat, firm stride. I'm Mr. Langley, he said, historian. I've been researching the Earnshaw and Linton families. Kathy was wary, but curious. What do you want? To understand the pattern. This place, it repeats itself. Love becomes obsession. Hope becomes grief. And children pay the price. He handed her a journal, a collection of writings by Nellie Dean, compiled long after her passing. Inside were maps, entries, and even a letter written by Isabella Linton, Heathcliff's abandoned wife. Heathcliff was not just a man, he was a wound, and everyone who loved him bled. Kathy closed the book. I don't want to live in that story, she said. Then write a new one, Mr. Langley replied. That night, Kathy and Hareton stood by the hearth. They burned the old letters, one by one. We'll remember them, Kathy said, but we won't live for them. As the flames consumed the past, a strange calm settled over the house. But as the final page turned to ash, a crack echoed through the walls. A hidden door in the basement slowly opened. The fire had just died down. When the creaking sound echoed again, Kathy stood frozen near the hearth, staring at the wall where the sound had come from. The hidden panel in the corner of the old drawing room had shifted, not by wind, not by accident, by something that wanted to be found. Hareton grabbed a lantern, his jaw tense. "Stay behind me." The hidden passage revealed a narrow stairway winding down beneath Wuthering Heights. The air was thick with dust, and every step echoed with forgotten sorrow. As they reached the bottom, they found a low chamber, part cellar, part shrine. Old portraits leaned against the stone walls. Letters lay bundled in silk and wax, and in the center of the room, a wooden trunk. On its lid, carved deep, C and H, Catherine and Heathcliff. Kathy knelt and slowly opened it. Inside were items so intimate they felt like intrusions. A lock of Catherine's hair, a faded scarf, a child's drawing, stick figures under a storm, and at the bottom, a diary. It wasn't Nellie Dean's, it was Heathcliff's. Hareton looked over Kathy's shoulder as she opened it. "I never thought he could write," he muttered, but Heathcliff had written, in jagged, passionate bursts. "The world gave me nothing, not even her. So I took everything. I hated the man she loved. I hated the child they raised. But I loved her beyond the bones of my soul. And when she died, I died too. Only the shadow remained. The last page was the most chilling. I will return as long as her blood walks these halls. I will not rest." Kathy closed the book, her heart pounding. "He knew I'd be born," she whispered, "or he cursed anyone who would carry her name." Hareton added darkly, "They burned nothing this time. Instead, they resealed the trunk, locked the passage, and swore never to open it again. But the shadows weren't done. That night, as Kathy walked the halls with a candle, she passed her mother's old bedroom. The door creaked open by itself. Inside, moonlight bathed the room in cold silver. Kathy stepped in, drawn to the window, and gasped. In the glass, she saw them. Two figures in reflection. Catherine, in her white gown, and Heathcliff behind her, reaching out, but never quite touching. Kathy turned around. The room was empty. The next morning, Kathy stood alone on the moors. The wind tugging her coat, she whispered into the vastness, "You were love. You were ruin. But I choose peace." And behind her, the wind fell silent. That evening, Hareton brought her a gift, a carved wooden cradle. "You think the ghosts will let us go?" he asked. "I don't care," she replied. "We're staying, but we're not surrendering." "Then let this child be the first to grow up without shadows." As the moon rose that night, Kathy placed her mother's letter, Heathcliff's diary, and her own journal in a new box marked with a single word, closure. But deep beneath Wuthering Heights, in the sealed room, the candle they had blown out flickered back to life. The moors were restless again. Rain whispered against the windows of Wuthering Heights, and Kathy couldn't sleep, not since she opened Heathcliff's diary, not since the shadows began to move in the corners of her vision. She sat at the old writing desk, her mother's, staring at the candle flame. The letter from Catherine, the diary, her own thoughts, they all blurred together. Her fingers trembled as she wrote, "There is something in this house that remembers love, but not kindly, not gently. It remembers like a wound. A sudden chill passed through the room. Kathy turned. Nothing. Just the silent furniture and the faint scent of earth and roses. That night, the dreams returned. She saw herself standing at the edge of the cliff, just like her mother had once stood. But in the dream, someone held her hand. Not Hareton, not Heathcliff. Someone she didn't recognize, but whose touch was heartbreakingly familiar. When she awoke, there was mud on her slippers. Downstairs, Hareton was already up, staring out the window. "You went out," he said, without turning. "No," she whispered. "I didn't." He looked at her, eyes dark with fear, not for himself, but for her. They both knew what was happening. The past wasn't done. Later that day, Kathy returned to the sealed room, alone. She placed her hand on the locked trunk. It was cold as ice. Suddenly, a whisper, barely audible. A name. Catherine. But not her own voice, not even her mother's. His. Heathcliff. In the days that followed, Kathy began to see fragments of a life she never lived. Glimpses of Catherine's memories, but twisted. Her mother dancing barefoot on the moors, laughing with Heathcliff, and then collapsing into his arms, sobbing as storm clouds swallowed the sun. One night, Kathy dreamt of a child, not herself. A baby with Heathcliff-esque eyes, and her mother's smile. But this child never existed. It was never in the letters, the diary, not even Nellie Dean's stories. What did it mean? Who was the child? Hareton grew increasingly worried. Kathy's moods shifted wildly. Some days she was serene, others shaken and lost. He tried to distract her, building the nursery, planting a small rose garden outside her window, even reading poetry aloud in the evenings. One night, he sat beside her, gently holding her hand. "You're slipping into their world," he said, "and I can't follow." "I know," she said, "but what if their world is already inside me?" She rested her head on his shoulder. "They say love haunts this place, but maybe it's asking to be healed." On the eve of a storm, Kathy stood once more in the old drawing room, the place where the hidden panel had opened. She spoke aloud, not to Hareton, not to herself, but to the air, to whoever is listening. "I forgive you, all of you, but I will not be your vessel." Behind her, the wind howled, the fire flared, and the portrait of Heathcliff fell from the wall. But when she picked it up, the face had changed, softened, no longer twisted with rage, but peaceful. The sun was barely rising, yet Kathy was already outside, standing at the edge of her mother's grave, wrapped in a shawl the color of ash and memory. The grass around the stone glistened with dew, untouched and sacred. No birds sang. The moor was holding its breath. She traced her fingers over the weathered inscription. "Catherine Earnshaw, wild and free, I never truly knew you," Kathy whispered, voice trembling with both defiance and longing. "Only in fragments, in dreams, and in the pain you left behind." From her coat pocket, she pulled a folded letter. She had written it the night before, not to seek forgiveness, but to offer peace. She laid it gently against the grave, tucking it beneath a stone. "I've carried your ghost like a second heartbeat," she said softly. "But now, I want to live for something, not haunt it." Behind her, the wind stirred, not harsh this time, but soft, almost like a sigh. Back at Wuthering Heights, Hareton stood alone in the nursery. The cradle was nearly finished, carved from dark pine, its edges smoothed with hours of care and quiet hope. On the side, he had etched 2 initials, C and H, no longer Catherine and Heathcliff, but Cathy and Hareton. He rubbed the wood with oil, the scent rising like memory. For a moment, the house seemed still, like it was listening, but peace was never simple here. Not in these walls, not in this blood. That night, Cathy's sleep turned restless, and then, vivid, she dreamt of the moor again. But this time, it was not night. It was dusk, golden and strange, with the sky painted in bruised oranges and fading violets. Ahead, she saw the house in ruin, not by fire or age, but by time unraveling. And standing in the center of the chaos were 2 figures, Catherine, glowing like moonlight, Heathcliff, dark as the soil that had once buried him. Between them floated something fragile, a child, not born yet, but already bound to the legacy of love and vengeance. The child cried, and neither parent reached for it. Instead, they turned away from each other, pulled apart by an invisible force, and Cathy was falling again, spiraling into earth and shadow until she landed in the secret chamber beneath Wuthering Heights. Only now, the chamber wasn't cold. It was alive, with breath, with presence. The trunk sat open, and its contents moved slightly, as if stirred by a breeze that didn't exist. Then a voice, his voice, filled the chamber like thunder, whispered into velvet. I took everything, because the world gave me nothing. But even in ruin, I still waited for her. She never came, so I cursed what remained. Then Catherine's voice, soft, broken, but resolute. Love doesn't return through rage. Let go and let them live. Cathy gasped awake, drenched in sweat. At dawn, she stood by the fire with Hareton. She didn't tell him everything, just enough. I think he's still here, she said, but not to harm. He's waiting. For what? Hareton asked. For the ending they never had. Together, they descended the hidden stairs once more. The air in the chamber had changed. The scarf, Catherine's scarf, had been moved, folded neatly, and beside it, a feather, pristine and white. It shouldn't have been there, but it was. A sign, a gesture. Forgiveness? Cathy picked it up and held it like something holy. Later, on the moors, she and Hareton walked in silence. The wind kissed her cheeks with cold fingers. I don't want our child to inherit ghosts, she whispered. I want them to inherit truth and love. He took her hand, warm and calloused. Then let's make that truth together, he replied. Starting now, and for the first time in generations, the house behind them did not creak. It simply breathed.